They said the inheritance was mine, but when I opened the will, everything was gone. My parents gave it all to my sister. What they didn't expect was what I'd do next. I always thought I understood my place in the family. I wasn't the loudest, the neediest, or the favorite, but I was steady. I worked hard, helped my parents build their business from the ground up, and never asked for much. When my father was sick, I ran the store. When my mother wanted to retire early, I told her to go ahead, I'd handle the books. It was never about money. It was about loyalty. So when the will was read, and I learned they'd given everything to my sister, I couldn't breathe. Not just the money, the house, the land. The business, the one I had poured years of my life into, all of it gone, left to her like a gift wrapped in a bow. I didn't even get a mention, not one sentence, not even a thank you. I remember staring at the lawyer thinking he must have made a mistake. Maybe he read the wrong name, maybe this wasn't the final version, but no. My parents sat there quietly, not even looking me in the eye. My sister Rachel had that usual look on her face, like she deserved it. She always had a way of making people feel like they owed her something. She smiled politely, as if this wasn't stealing someone's future. I walked out before the papers were signed. The air outside felt colder than it should have. I stood on the sidewalk for a long time, trying to make sense of it all. Had I done something wrong? Had I not done enough? Or was I just invisible to them? I thought about all the birthdays I missed with friends so I could keep the store running. The weekends I gave up. The holidays I spent alone because the business needed someone to cover the shift. All of it for what? I didn't cry, I couldn't. I just felt hollow, like something in me had been quietly ripped out while no one was watching. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking why. And as the sky turned gray outside my window, a darker thought came to me. I need to ask them face to face. The next morning I drove to their house without calling. I didn't want to give them time to prepare some polished explanation. I needed honesty, raw and real, even if it hurt. My hands were shaking when I rang the doorbell. My mother answered, still in her robe, a mug of tea in her hand like it was just another day. She looked surprised to see me. "Daniel," she said softly, "I didn't expect you so early." "I need to talk," I said. My voice was low, tight. She stepped aside without a word. Dad was in the living room, flipping through a newspaper like nothing had happened. I stood there for a moment, waiting for him to acknowledge me. He didn't even look up. "Why?" I asked, finally breaking the silence. "Why would you do that to me?" My mother sat down on the edge of the couch, sighing. My father glanced up, adjusted his glasses, and said, "It was a hard decision, but Rachel, she needed it more." My chest tightened. Needed it more? I ran that business for years. I kept it alive. "You're strong," my mother said, as if that explained everything. "Rachel's had a harder time. She's been through a lot." I laughed bitterly. "So that's the price of being dependable, you get overlooked." "Don't twist our words," my father snapped. "We're not punishing you, we're just helping your sister." "You didn't even talk to me," I said. "You didn't think I deserved a conversation after everything I gave up for you." My mother's eyes welled up. "We didn't want to hurt you." "Well," I said, backing toward the door, "you did." I didn't slam the door. I didn't shout. But something broke in me as I walked back to my car, not just trust, but something deeper. A thread that had quietly tied me to them all these years was unraveling, and they didn't even notice. The drive back was quiet. I didn't turn on the radio. I just stared at the road, thinking about how strange it was that two people who raised me could know me so little. That night I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, one thought rising above all the others. If they don't see my worth, maybe it's time I start proving it to myself. The days that followed felt like drifting in a fog. I went through the motions, waking up, brushing my teeth, walking to the corner store, but everything felt muted. Numb, like I was living someone else's life. For the first time in years, I didn't have the business to wake up for. No early deliveries, no inventory checks, no morning rush. The routine I had built my life around was gone, handed over like a birthday gift to someone else. I tried calling a few friends, but every conversation felt forced. How do you explain to someone that your parents gave away your future like it was spare change? I spent most of my time alone, sitting on the balcony of my small apartment, watching people go about their lives. They all looked like they had somewhere to be, someone waiting for them. I had no one. I kept wondering if maybe I had missed something, some sign that this was coming. Had I been blind? Or had I just convinced myself for too long that loyalty was enough? One evening, I found myself flipping through an old photo album. There were pictures of me as a teenager, standing behind the store counter, learning how to fix the register, stocking shelves late at night. Always smiling, always eager to help. Back then, I believed that being good, being reliable would eventually be seen, that it would count for something. Turns out it didn't. I wanted to be angry, but what I felt more than anything was lost. The structure that used to hold my world in place was gone, and in its place, just silence. But silence has a way of making things clear. After a week of sulking, something inside me started to shift. The sadness was still there, but it was changing, hardening, taking shape into something new. If they didn't think I was worthy of what I helped build, maybe it's time I build something of my own. The thought was small at first, just a flicker, but it stayed with me. That night I sat up in bed, staring at the ceiling. I thought about the business, my business really, and all the things I had done for it. And I whispered to myself, they may have given it away, but they don't know what I'm capable of without them. The next morning I walked by the store. I hadn't been there since the reading of the will. I didn't even mean to go, my feet just carried me that way. Maybe out of habit, maybe something deeper. The sign above the door still read Mason's Market, named after my grandfather. I used to feel proud every time I saw it. Now it felt like a lie. Through the glass, I could see Rachel behind the counter. She was on her phone, barely paying attention to the customer in front of her. The place looked different already, colder, messier, like it didn't belong to anyone. I stood there for a while watching, my hands clenched into fists without thinking. That store wasn't just a job, it was where I became who I am. I remembered my first day working the register, nervous and fumbling with change. My father standing beside me, teaching me how to count coins without looking down, the way my mother would hum while stacking fresh produce. All those early mornings unloading boxes before the sun came up. It wasn't just work, it was life, family. And I was the one who kept it running when they started pulling away. I was the one who stayed late, cleaned up, fixed the broken cooler no one else would touch. I was the one who figured out how to do online orders when the pandemic hit, who kept things afloat when customers were disappearing. Now it felt like I had been erased from the picture. But standing there, I realized something else, something important. That store only ran because of me. The systems, the relationships with vendors, the trust of the regular customers, it was all built on my effort. And I took none of it with me. A strange calm came over me. Maybe they had the keys, the deed, the title, but I had the knowledge, the grit, the experience. They took the structure, I was the foundation. For the first time since the betrayal, I felt something like control, like maybe I wasn't as powerless as I thought. I turned and walked away, not looking back once. If they were so quick to forget what I built, maybe it was time I reminded them. I spent the next few days planning not out of revenge but clarity. I wasn't going to beg for what should have been mine. I was going to take back what I earned in the only way that mattered, by building something better. But before I could move forward, I had to understand exactly what I was up against. I started digging into the business records. I still had access to some of the financials, old vendor accounts, and archived emails. I had handled everything for years, so getting back into those systems wasn't hard. Rachel might have the ownership now, but she didn't know how it all worked. Not like I did. What I found was worse than I expected. Invoices were going unpaid. Stock orders were off, too much of the wrong stuff, none of what customers actually bought. Employee schedules were sloppy. The regulars who used to come in every morning had stopped showing up. She was running the business like a toy she didn't know how to use. That's when the idea hit me. I wouldn't fight for a piece of what they took. I'd build something of my own across the street. It was bold, risky. Some might call it petty, but I wasn't doing it to hurt them. I was doing it to prove that I never needed their permission to succeed. I called in a few favors, an old vendor who still respected me, a landlord who remembered how well I ran things, and a couple of part-time employees who had quit when Rachel took over. Within 2 weeks, I had a lease on a small storefront. It wasn't fancy, but it was a start. I named it Foundations. Every nail, every shelf, every label felt like a piece of me going back where it belonged. I designed the layout from scratch. I stayed up late building a simple website. I talked to local farmers about better deals and made sure I stocked what people actually wanted, not just what looked good on paper. It was terrifying. starting over with no safety net, no family support, no inheritance, just my experience and my pride. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like I had purpose again. And I wasn't afraid anymore. The first day I opened Foundations, only 3 customers came in. One was an old man who thought we were a pharmacy. The other 2 were regulars from Mason's Market, people who remembered my face, not the name on the building. It wasn't much, but it was a start. I swept the floor myself every night, restocked shelves, ran the register, built the online order system from the ground up. Every detail was in my hands, not because I had to, but because I wanted it that way. Every hour I poured into the place felt like stitching myself back together. The word spread slowly at first. A few familiar faces came in out of curiosity. "Aren't you the guy from Mason S?" they'd ask. "Was," I'd say with a small smile. "Now I'm just here." They kept coming back, not because of the prices or the logo, but because I treated them like more than just transactions. I knew their names. I remembered what brand of bread they liked, how their kids were doing in school. That's what I had always done, and Rachel never understood that part. Within a month, things started to shift. I got featured on a local blog. Then a neighborhood Facebook group started recommending us. We weren't just surviving, we were growing. Meanwhile, Mason's Market was fading. A few of my old suppliers reached out, saying Rachel had missed payments or been rude on the phone. Some asked if they could work with me instead. I didn't gloat. I just said yes and kept going. One evening, I caught a glimpse of Rachel through the window of her store. She stood behind the counter, arms crossed, staring across the street at my glowing sign. Her face said it all: confusion, maybe even fear. But I didn't feel sorry. I felt free. I wasn't chasing validation anymore. I wasn't trying to earn my parents' approval. I was building something that reflected who I was, not who they expected me to be. They gave everything away thinking I'd be nothing without it. But I was just getting started. It had been 2 months since Foundations opened, and I hadn't heard a single word from my parents. Not a call, not a message, not even a visit to see what I was building. I'd be lying if I said it didn't sting. Somewhere inside, that old hope still flickered, the part of me that wanted them to see, to understand, to apologize. But they didn't. One afternoon, a customer told me Mason's Market was having a clearance sale. "Looks like they're trying to keep the lights on," she said casually. I just nodded and rang her up. I didn't need to ask for details. Later that day, I got a text from Rachel. "Can we talk?" I stared at the screen for a long time before replying. "What is there to say?" She didn't respond, but the next morning she showed up at my store. She walked in like she owned the place, but her eyes gave her away, unsure, guarded. She looked around, clearly surprised by how well things had come together. "This is nice," she said. "Thanks," I replied flatly. She fidgeted with the strap of her purse. "Mom and Dad are worried. The store isn't doing well." I waited. "They didn't know you'd go this far," she added like that was a defense. I crossed my arms. "You mean they didn't think I'd survive without them?" She didn't answer that, just looked at me like I was someone she didn't quite recognize. Then came the real reason she was here. I was thinking maybe we could partner up, combine both stores. You've clearly got a following, and I still have. "No," I said, cutting her off. She blinked. "What?" "I'm not interested," I said. "This, what you see around you, I built this without anyone's help. I'm not going backward." She didn't argue. She just nodded slowly, as if she finally understood something she hadn't before. As she left, I felt a strange weight lift from my chest. I had waited so long for their recognition, their apology, their change of heart. But in that moment, I realized I didn't need it anymore. I wasn't part of their story now, and they weren't part of mine. It didn't happen overnight, it never does, but you could see it coming. The once steady foot traffic at Mason's Market slowed to a trickle. Shelves were half-stocked. A faded help wanted sign hung in the window for weeks. Word spread that their best staff had quit. Vendors were refusing to deliver on credit. Customers complained about spoiled produce and missed orders. Meanwhile, Foundations was thriving. I didn't do anything to hurt their business. I didn't need to. They were falling apart because they never understood what made the business work in the first place. It wasn't just products on shelves, it was people, community, care. They thought they could hand over a legacy without handing over the heart that kept it alive. One morning, I passed by Mason's Market and saw the sign in the window. Closing soon, final week. I stopped. For a moment, I just stood there, watching as a young employee taped up a clearance banner. The place looked dim, tired, like a house with no one left inside. A part of me thought I'd feel triumphant, vindicated, but I didn't. I felt quiet. It wasn't joy. It wasn't sadness either. Just a steady, deep acknowledgement that this was the natural end of something that had already died a long time ago. A few days later, I got a letter in the mail, handwritten. My father's script. Daniel, I won't pretend to understand everything that's happened, but I do see now what you were worth to us, even if we realized it too late. The store is gone. Rachel's moving on. Your mother and I are trying to make sense of what's left. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted you to know we were wrong. You didn't need us, we needed you. Dad. I folded the letter and placed it in a drawer. I didn't reply. There was nothing left to say. Their chapter had closed. Mine was still being written, every day with every customer, every decision, every early morning and late night. I hadn't taken their business from them. They'd given it up the moment they stopped valuing the one who built it. Life moved forward, as it always does. Foundations became more than a store. It became a meeting place, a corner of the neighborhood where people felt seen. I didn't just sell groceries. I remembered birthdays, slipped handwritten thank you notes into shopping bags, and donated food to the local shelter without needing a spotlight. And the people gave back. One of my first hires, Carlos, became my right hand, a quiet kid who reminded me a lot of myself, eager, reliable, full of potential. I taught him everything I knew, just like my dad once taught me. But this time it was different. I wasn't grooming someone to carry my legacy. I was helping him build his own. There was Mrs. Elkins, who baked muffins every Thursday and brought them in for the staff. Maya, the florist from 2 doors down, who always saved me a fresh sunflower for the counter. And the older man, Robert, who lost his wife last year. He came in every morning just to talk. It hit me one day as I was locking up after a long shift. I wasn't alone anymore. Somehow, without realizing it, I had built a new kind of family, not the one I was born into, but the one I chose. People who supported each other, who showed up without needing anything in return. People who saw me for who I really was. And in their eyes, I wasn't the forgotten son or the disowned manager. I was Daniel, the guy who started over when everyone thought he'd disappear. Sometimes I'd catch myself thinking about my parents, wondering what they were doing, if they still talked about me, if they felt regret. But the sting was gone. I no longer needed their acceptance to feel whole. I had filled the space they left behind, not with bitterness, but with something far stronger. I had taken what was broken and rebuilt it into something beautiful. Not out of revenge, but out of self-respect. That's what they never understood. You can take a name off a sign, but you can't erase the soul behind it. It's been a year now. Foundations has grown beyond anything I imagined. We expanded into the space next door. Added a small cafe section where people sit and talk over coffee. I even started mentoring a few local teens interested in business. The kind of kids who remind me what it felt like to be overlooked, underestimated. I don't think much about the inheritance anymore. There was a time I believed legacy was something passed down. That blood and family were the foundations of everything. But I've learned legacy is something you build, not something you're given. And family is made up of those who stand with you when everything else falls away. A few months ago, my mom walked into the store. She didn't say anything at first, just browsed the shelves, her eyes soft and tired. I could tell life hadn't been easy since the collapse. Her shoulders were heavier, her voice quieter when she finally spoke. "You've done well," she said, "better than we thought." I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded. She looked around, then back at me. "Your father isn't well, he misses you." I took a deep breath. That familiar ache stirred again, the one that used to control me, but it didn't hurt as much now. "I hope he finds peace," I said. She nodded. "I hope you do too." Then she left, and I let her go. I didn't chase her, didn't ask for anything more. I had my closure, not in her words, but in my life. The life I built when they tried to write me out of theirs. Some people think strength is about getting back what was taken from you, but real strength is about moving forward without it, about realizing you never needed their permission to become who you are. Every morning I walk into Foundations, I smile. Not because I won, but because I chose this, all of it. Not out of spite, but out of love for the man I've become. And that's the kind of legacy no one can take away.